I am joined by Luis Cornejo, who was part of the original and inaugural Trending Socials Content Creator Retreat. In the retreat workshops, one of the workshops that Luis led was From Burnout to Balance, Mental Health Tips for Creators, and that's exactly what we're going to jump into right now. Luis was one of the presenters at that workshop, one of the planners, my co-host. Luis Cornejo is an LMFT and certified sex therapist that supports LGBTQ plus and BIPOC communities with compassionate, insightful mental health therapy. Luis is also a fantastic creator, model, and just overall mogul. And I'm so happy to have you here with me today, Luis. Give it up for Luis, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be back to keep talking about this topic and revisiting that amazing inaugural trip for Trending Socials.
Absolutely. It's like reliving, just having this conversation with you again is like reliving those moments. It was such a beautiful experience, such a beautiful time. Um,
Absolutely.
and as I've been brushing up on the presentations and the modules and the workshops, like I'm adding new things too that like I'm like
Hmm.
that I didn't realize before, or information has been updated, right? And so one thing's for sure, right? Creative burnout is real. And so
Hmm.
this topic is more than relevant, I think, constantly, right? Unfortunately, right? Because we do need to constantly remind ourselves it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not something that's just innate, and so we have to
Hmm.
continuously remind ourselves to take a
Hmm.
beat, take a breath. And so I'm so
Hmm.
excited for you to walk us through this workshop once again. And for those that didn't get to attend, this is maybe your first time. Very important material, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah.
Where
Thank
should we
you.
start, Luis? I know we have your agenda here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that intro. And 100%, burnout is something that everyone experiences at one point or another, whether you're a creator, a professional, even just a human, right? You're going to burn out at some point because there's so much demand, I think, in life in general, expectations, sometimes very unrealistic ones. And so burnout is such an important topic that oftentimes doesn't get talked about in the creator community. And that's why when you and I first started to talk about, what topics to explore, what things can we talk about related to mental health for this very first Trending Socials retreat, we came up with burnout. And so burnout is, I mean, like I said, universal and also something that we can all benefit from learning more of. So today we're going to be talking about what is burnout, 10 steps to overcome burnout. We did do a group activity that I will share so that folks can try it out on their own. I think it can still be very beneficial, even if it's not as a group the way it was intended. And then we did have a Q&A, but I'm going to let you also, if you have any questions that you can ask throughout this module, Luis, that's more than welcome as well.
I will definitely be jumping in asking questions. And I also want to remind people that are watching this, the recording, that you can ask questions in the Trending Socials Community Hub. That is part of the course. And that is also just free to join. So if you're not part of it, you can absolutely join it. But yeah, I'll be asking questions throughout as well.
Hey, so first of all, let's start out with what is burnout, right? Because many times when we hear these words, we even use them, right? Sometimes we don't really understand the complete context of it. But for the sake of specifically referring to the creative community and creators, burnout is long-term stress that leaves you emotionally, physically, and mentally drained. So for content creators, it's really the constant pressure of having to keep creating, staying visible, and satisfying followers. It can be very exhausting and definitely lead to serious and more chronic issues. Burnout, when it comes to being creative, right? It's more common than you think, mostly because of the level of pressure that so many creators are under, especially as they see growth in their platforms, right? There's this expectation for them to do more, more, more. And I see this, even for myself firsthand as someone that uses these platforms to educate, but also to um, basically put out my work, right, in a way that it can be accessible to people. And so there's often a requirement, right, and a need from folks who are consuming this kind of content to want more, right? It makes sense, right? You like following someone, you like what you see, you're going to want to see more, you're going to want to learn more, you're going to connect with this person. And so burnout is something that can happen very easily when we don't understand it or really have these tools set in place to help us navigate it.
And Luis, you also mentioned, right, like it's almost becomes, the need to create almost becomes an addiction, if you will, because you're seeing growth and you're looking at numbers and stats, and it's like one week to the next, your numbers are dropping because your last viral post is no longer getting views. So you're like scrambling to create something more
Mhm.
impactful in the last, and you're comparing your numbers to other creators, and
Yeah.
it's a cycle, right? It's a wheel. So
Mhm.
I think
It's
when the
draining.
it was that
It's draining. It's extremely draining, emotionally exhausting, physically
exhausting.
exhausting, mentally exhausting to have
And
to
we
come
don't
up with
talk
something.
about it enough. I think a lot of creators kind
Yep.
of just accept it, or are embarrassed to kind of mention it because the
Hmm.
next creator is producing double, right? And so we kind
Yeah.
of shy away from even bringing it up. But nah, it's real, and
Hmm.
it's we need to talk about it. And I'm so grateful you're here to share the tools on how to manage it.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that because I think it's also important to recognize that there's still a lot of like shame related to content creation for so many folks that oftentimes people will say things like, it's not a real job or it's
Mm,
not something that, you're just dancing on screen or whatever.
mm,
But content creation is a lot of work. It's a lot of planning. It's time consuming. It's also a lot of like consideration on what you're putting out there, right? It's representing a brand, it's representing you as a person. And I'm a firm believer that all of this can still be very much not just genuine and authentic, but also a really great way to connect with community. But I think that there's so much like shame around it just because many people don't understand the value of it. And yet it's such a big industry and it's a reality right now that we are all consuming content. And
yeah.
I think it's also great, right, that so many of us can express ourselves in this way and find our community and find people that may benefit from the content that we create. So I'm saying this because there are many creatives that I know who are extremely passionate, very dedicated, and do the work when they put out content. So it is exhausting. And I think that's another layer, right, to the taboo and what leads to burnout is that we're not just putting stuff out. A lot of times it's very personal and it's also very vulnerable, and that is also exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's mentally draining.
Yeah, yeah. And so, with anything, when it comes to mental health, I'll say that the first step is always identifying, right? We have to know what something is so that
Mhm.
we can understand it and also put in the work to help ourselves, right? Whether it's being more compassionate, whether it's getting help, whether it's asking for things that we need or setting boundaries and limits. And so, with identifying burnout, we want to remember that one of the first and the biggest signs of burnout is feeling constantly exhausted. No matter how much you sleep, no matter how much you rest or the vacations you go on or that you put your phone down, if you're feeling constantly tired, that's a big sign of burnout.
Mm,
Another one is creative blocking, right? If you're struggling to come up with fresh ideas or if you feel like you've hit a rut or you're stuck, right? And this is ongoing, right? It's like it starts to affect you, right? You're feeling negative about yourself, you're feeling imposter syndrome, you're feeling all types of ways, like depressed, maybe even about not being able to be creative. That's also
mm,
another sign of burnout. Irritability is one that I think a lot of people don't think of, but irritability is actually very much something that happens for a lot of us, right? We start to get really frustrated with the work, where even with our audience, right, with
mm.
the people that are supporting us, because, like I said, there's a demand or an expectation of us, and so we can start to be more irritable. So if we're noticing ourselves being distant or being snappy or reacting very strongly to things that maybe didn't bother us before, it could also be a part of burnout. The other one is loss of passion, right? Losing enthusiasm for creating or sharing content. So we're already, we might be feeling like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I'm it feels too taxing or just extremely overwhelming, right? So we may not have that passion, and this is long term, right? We're talking about weeks, months where we're just stuck and we just feel these things constantly. And this could also be a representation of something else, right? We could also be going through depression, we could be experiencing a lot of anxiety, and so this is very much connected to mental health.
Yeah, I did want to say, like, I personally did struggle with a lot of these, but I feel like the passion was just not there. And so for a
Mm-hmm.
long time last year, I kind of stopped posting. And
Hmm.
there was a lot going on in my life, personal accomplishments, or I don't even know if it's an accomplishment, right? I received my green card, which is a huge thing, personal thing for me. And so there
Yeah.
was a lot of guilt around that, and even like sharing that. And I haven't really
Hmm.
publicly talked about this, but there's a little guilt in even talking about that, because there's so
Hmm.
many people that are still not, uh,
Yeah.
their status is not adjusted, that are not in the situations that I'm in. So I
Yeah.
do have a bit of a, I don't know if shame is the right word, but definitely guilt. And so
Hmm.
that's kind of
Hmm.
crept into my passion and ability to
Hmm.
want to share my life and
Hmm.
share the things that
Hmm.
I want to create about.
Yeah.
Um, so that's, I feel like that's somewhat related too, and
Hmm.
it's okay to pivot, I think, is where I'm getting at, and it's okay to
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
change the conversation and change the type of content you're creating if you're not feeling good about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and absolutely. That is a very valid and very much related point that you brought up, because at the core of it, we're human. We're going to
Mm,
experience different things in our lives, and we also experience very intense emotions when it comes to how much we're sharing, what we're sharing. And, social media, while it is a tool and extremely beneficial, can also have its downsides, right? Including a lot of people who are not supportive, a lot of trolls, right? Things like that. And so, I mean, all of this is connected. We have to talk about all of it, right, from that context. So, even you sharing this right now, I think is so crucial for folks who are listening to be reminded that um, many of us, we experience things that sometimes feel they're in isolation, but there's so many people out there who can benefit from it. Whether it is just sharing that we feel guilt about posting this, because many
mm,
people do feel that way. And yeah, at the same time, there's going to be folks that do connect and folks that don't. So, we have to be very, I think, not just open-minded when we're watching content, but understand that there's context to things. I know for you, Luis, you do a lot of educational content to talk to folks about how your process has been and your own experience, and that helps people.
yeah.
But I absolutely understand what you're sharing. That there's going to be moments where we do need to pivot, move back, take some time, reflect, do the work, come back. And I think that one of the pressures of being a content creator is that we feel like we always have to be on, or we lose momentum, or we lose
Yeah.
people, attention. And the reality is that, this is like anything else, right? It's really a tool. If we're not okay, then it's not going to help us.
If we're not good, our content's not going to be good. We have to be good for everything in our ecosystem to function, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that goes back to that taking care of ourselves and just being able to identify when we're not okay.
Yeah.
And I will go through some steps as well and things to do to help yourself and also help others, because content creation is also in a lot of ways community, right? We
Mhm.
connect with other creators. And I know that was one of the big pillars when we were doing the retreat, was sharing with folks that it's important to network. It's important to connect with
Yeah.
like-minded folks, and also to find authenticity, right, in these relationships. Um, so yeah.
And just a quick note on the retreat itself, right? Like, I feel like those bonds we created are for life. Like, I still
Absolutely.
talk to almost everybody. I still talk to everybody
Mhm.
from the retreat,
Yeah.
uh, including Monse, who is on track for graduation. Like, she was
Mhm.
our intern at the time, training socials intern. And her mom, I still talk to her on social media. She's still on Instagram. We still DM. We
Yeah.
still talk pretty regularly. So it's just like
Yeah.
these bonds were created and they're for life.
Yeah.
And Mo, I still talk to Mo about, we still have our
Mhm.
one-on-one advising strategy
Mhm.
sessions. So there's so much, yeah, the connection part is so real and it's so important to take it
Mhm.
from digital to in real life situations.
We had a great group. We had a really, really
Such a good
great,
group.
amazing group of folks. And, I'm still connected to a few, and I also see and support others through social media. And, I think that this also highlights, right, why these kinds of opportunities and retreats are so impactful because it's not just the education you're getting, but it's also the relationships you're building. And
Yeah.
we had so much fun. It was honestly one of the highlights of my year in 2024. So, yeah, moving on to the next piece for
Yes.
burnout. Um,
We first we identify the burnout, and
mhm.
then uh,
But continuing, we have more. We have more.
continuing to identify.
I know, I know.
Continuing.
I wish it was straightforward, but there's definitely a lot to burn out, and you know what? Like I said, some of these things may apply to you. So this isn't like a checklist where you have to have every
Right.
single one, right? To say I'm burned out. Like that's not at all. We know ourselves best, and many of us, whether we want to be real and acknowledge that we're feeling burnout. I mean, some of us, we might get into denial. We might want to push through because we think that that is what we're supposed to do, but these are just things to help you, right? Identify it. If you're feeling one, two, it can still be a sign of burnout. You don't have to experience every single one to say, I'm burned out. And so, the reason why I'm saying that is because you can start to address it early on before you get to the checklist and you're checking all of them off. You could be like, oh, I'm really feeling these two. I need to start reshifting like what's going on or my lifestyle or decisions or boundaries or whatever before I start to check off, all of them. But continuing on to signs and identifying, another one is procrastination, right? Putting off creating or finishing projects. Many of us who are in content creation do this for work. And so there's actual projects, money, contracts, deadlines involved. So when we find ourselves just putting things off continuously and we're like, I'm going to do it, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. And it's not a normal thing for us, right? Like some folks can function in that way where they wait till last minute and then they still create some amazing stuff, right? And put it out there. But many of us, we don't, right? We have planning in place and a process. So when we start to see that kind of go out the window and the procrastination comes in and it's not something that's usual, then we can start to think, okay, something's going on here. Now, the next thing is something that I think is easier for folks to notice because we're a lot better, I think, with acknowledging physical symptoms, right? Like I have a headache, I have a stomach ache, it's just easier because we're so conditioned, I think, to acknowledge physical symptoms versus emotional, psychological ones. But physical symptoms are things like headaches, muscle pain, back pain, stomach issues, right? If we're feeling these and they're just coming up, and we're like, okay, what is going on? It could be related to stress, right? From content creation, from the work we're doing, and part of burnout. So that's something to pay attention to. Social withdrawal is another one. We all have different capacities for socializing, even when it's online.
Mm,
But when we start to avoid people, not just in person, but also avoid online, we're not interacting with the people that make us feel good or that we normally connect with, or we're avoiding collaboration, right? We just don't have that energy or that capacity to work with someone else or anything like that. That can also be a sign of it, right? We might be isolating. And then the last one is self-doubt, feeling like your content isn't good enough despite your efforts. And this one is a bit abstract, I will say, only because I think we all think that at some point when we're putting something out and we don't see the instant gratification, right? The likes come in, the shares come in, we're kind of like, was that good? Did I do good enough? Did I put enough effort? But there's different levels, I think, to it, right? Because most of us we see kind of shifts, right? Especially when we're starting off, or even when we're like already pros, we start to see kind of shifts in what people want and the type of content and the trends and all that stuff that goes into it. So that can also go up and down, right? But I think that when we're just everything is just, like everything I'm putting out is crap, or it's not good enough, then
mm,
that's when we can start to kind of think, okay, yeah, like this doesn't feel normal for me, right? Where I put some stuff out and even though it didn't get a lot of likes, there were some people that connected and it felt good. But now it's like, even when I get that, I'm still like, was it good enough? Like I didn't get a million views. So, I
mm,
mean, those are kind of also signs, right, that we may be burning out. We're doubting everything that we're putting out, like even just taking a picture, right? And I've worked with some folks who tell me, like, I go back and forth between like just posting something because I get so much anxiety and it wasn't like that before, like I thought it felt cute and now I feel like it has to be perfect, right? It's like like
Yeah,
you sense it.
yeah. I think, and what others can you identify? I don't know. It might fall into procrastination, but like one that sticks out as a recurring theme when I'm talking to clients is that they get creative paralysis or creator
Mm,
paralysis, where there's just so many ifs, ands, ors, buts, still
mhm,
like a little micro decisions that they end up not posting or not creating because they're overwhelmed with the decision of making a decision, whether it's
mhm.
about the hook or how long the video should be or what camera to use or what lighting, what microphone. Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, just post it and let's see what
Mhm.
happens, right? We can always
Yeah.
pivot. It's not the end of the world. I think we put a
Yeah.
lot of burnout contributes to, or putting a lot of pressure on ourselves like that
Yeah.
continue contributes to burnout. Let me say that again.
Yeah.
Putting a lot of pressure on ourselves like that contributes to our
Yeah.
burnout, right? And so at the end of the
Yeah.
day, really just post it, and we
Mhm.
can analyze the data later. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
a lot
and
of
it's a lot of
times,
pressure, Luis. I'm glad you're mentioning that because I know when I started as a content creator or just putting things out, I thought that I had to have all the latest gadgets and gizmos and spend all of this money. And, sometimes I look back at my content and I feel so good and proud of myself for knowing that I had just posted stuff that sometimes didn't even look good. The
Mhm.
audio was bad, it was out of sync. But now when I see my content and even like my platform's grown, the growth, I'm like, wow, like I needed to go through that to really get to this place. And if there were definitely moments, a lot of moments of self-doubt, a lot of moments of wanting to quit. But I think for me, what really helped was going back to not just the intention of why I was even putting these things out, but also the little moments that there were people that did connect with it. That one like, the
Mhm.
person that commented, the person that sent a message and said, Luis, oh my gosh, I needed this. And
Yeah.
then I think that was always a reminder for me that, afterwards, even now when I have seen a shift, because even the algorithm, right? I think a lot of people struggle with understanding social media in that deeper way. Sometimes we just think, oh, people don't like me or people don't like what I'm sharing, but also the algorithm has a lot to do with it. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things that, behind the scenes that also affect and impact the way that content gets shared. And so, like I said, I mean, we have to have those things in perspective so we don't internalize it as it's a me thing. I'm not good enough,
Yeah.
but reality is, there's a lot of content creators and it does take time to build community. And a big part of it, which I will say as well, is that we do a lot of that networking sometimes outside of social media when we go to creator events, when we go to things like the Canva conferences they have, things to like VidCon. I mean, even just
Mhm.
like meetups, right? Or people that you co-create with, right? Content and collab with. And that's how you build, outside of social media too. So there's a lot that goes into it. So just understanding that this is not always a reflection of us individually, but it's also it's work, right? I mean, it is not just a hobby for so many folks. It's a source of income. It is a way to promote our businesses that may not be rooted in social media, but like, we may own a coffee shop, for example. We may own like a media business, right? I mean, these are ways to get that out there. And so a lot of times, because there's so much going on and there's so much that's on social media, we want to just be careful
Mm.
to not correlate our self-esteem right with with the messages we're getting.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something you said. It's a little related to what we're talking about, but when you were talking about not needing all that equipment and looking back at your content, but
Mhm.
still being able to grab an audience, right? Grab
Yeah.
attention. I think what it comes down to is who you're talking to and the message,
Hmm.
and is your message getting across? Because we've all seen those viral
Yeah.
videos
Yeah.
of people just talking in their car, camera
Yeah.
on, terrible lighting, just talking to
Hmm.
camera, but it's really the compelling message, the relatability, or the fact that they're connecting on a one-on-one, deeper, personal, human level.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
really what we're on here for. Who cares if there's a
Hmm.
little static on your mic. Who cares if you didn't use the ring light? It's about
yeah,
connection, right? So let's not forget
yeah,
about that. At the end of the day, we're here to
yeah,
socialize and connect
yeah, yeah.
one-on-one.
Exactly, exactly. And like I said earlier, you never know, right? Because that's what's so, I think, fun in a way about social media or content creation, that I've had content that I did not expect to blow up the way it did blow up. And
Mhm.
then I worked on this other reel like hours, and
Spend so much time.
I was thinking this is gonna blow up, and like I get like 20
Yeah,
likes, and I'm like, how did that other one where I didn't even care about the lighting, where it was so random, and I just put like something I was thinking of in the moment, blow up like that, you
because it
know? And
connected somehow, it connected more, right?
exactly. And so you never know. So I think that's why it's so important to like not think of our content as everything has to be a home run, but really more about an extension, right? Of how we're curating what we want to put out into the world. Some stuff will resonate, some stuff will not. We are human. And I love something you said earlier. You mentioned something about who the message is for. Our message is not to everyone.
It's not.
It's not gonna work, and it's not gonna happen. There will be so many people who will challenge, uh, say, just not agree, whatever, right? But the reality is that we have to focus on who exactly is it that we're trying to reach. And that was something that I struggled with for a while. And it was, part of what led me to burnout a few times, was not really knowing who my audience was, not really knowing who I was speaking to, for the beginning of it, because in my head I was like, I need to relate to everyone needs to connect with me, people need to see it, that I am
Yeah.
intentionally doing this to educate, to make the world a better place. And then I was like, wait a minute, but
And that will burn you out. That will burn you out if you're
because you
trying
will
to
not
please
satisfy everyone.
everybody. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. That helps with burnout as well. Is just being very realistic, very real with yourself, and accepting that what you're creating is not for everyone, and it will not be everyone's cup of tea. But there will be people out there, that will benefit from it.
Exactly. And that's who your message is for. That's who your content is for. That's why you're creating.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's move on. So how we now we know
Okay.
now we know we have burnout. Now how do we overcome it?
There you go. Yeah. Now we're going to go into the 10 steps to overcome burnout. And these are just some practical strategies. I've actually been able to reflect and think a lot on this presentation because it was a while ago. And while I'm still very much standing by the fact that this is a great list, and also some really relevant and still very accurate information, I went to an event recently, and someone said something that really stuck with me, and I loved it, and it was about burnout too.
Mm,
And yeah, and so this was something I don't think I added, and I was going through it, and maybe I did, but it wasn't in the same context. But the way they said it and what I liked was that they were basically saying, when you're burned out, it's not about the rest or the self-care, it's about the lifestyle. Something has to change, because
mm,
it's not so much that like you can get as much rest as you want, you can sleep, you can do all this stuff, but if you keep coming back to it, you're just going to fall into the same cycle. And so it requires actual change. And I like that
mm,
because I was thinking about how, yeah, burnout is usually when we may not have good boundaries or limits. We may be doing something that is not helpful to us. For example, in my case, there was a point where I was taking on way too much and saying yes to everything, and then realizing like, wait, I don't have enough bandwidth to do all of this for others, and then still come back and try to do this for myself.
right.
And so I had to start saying no and stepping back from it. And originally I thought, well, if I get enough sleep, if I schedule it well enough, if I organize it this way, I won't get burned out. And I was getting burned out anyway.
Yeah.
And the big shift happened for me when I was like, okay, yeah, I need to change this part of my lifestyle and the saying yes to everyone
Yeah.
and try to, do more than I can. And so setting those boundaries and limits made a huge difference, and just shifting that lifestyle as well. Shifting the way that I approach things, shifting the way that I interacted with folks, shifting my time and energy. So I really like that because I think that it speaks to um the fact that burnout can be very cyclical, right?
Mm,
That if we go back to the same thing, we're going to end up burned out again. And so that can shift and change, of course. Like we're never going to have the same recipe to help us move through it, but it is helpful to understand it. Like we've been talking about, right? What are the signs? And then now we're going to talk to some steps to help overcome it. And these steps, you may not need all of them. You may just benefit from one or two. You may have to switch them out. You may have to add an 11th step.
Mm,
But I do hope that these steps, are helpful for folks out there. So let's go ahead and get started with the first step, which is something we already did,
recognize the signs.
recognizing the signs. So now we know what these signs are. We can more or less kind of dictate when it's happening. We can understand from a mental health perspective what burnout looks like and how it can be connected to things like depression, anxiety, even trauma, right? And Luis,
Mm,
you brought in a really good point earlier about life happens, things shift and change. That can also lead to burnout, especially if we have a lot going on
yeah.
behind the scenes. Um, so number two is looking at your routine, right? I like to list, and I use my calendar app. I mean, I'm like honestly married to it
Yeah.
because if it's not on there, it's not happening. It never existed. We're not gonna
I'm the
do it.
same.
Yeah, it's because it helps me as someone that needs to have structure, that's not good with structure. It helps me feel organized and contained.
Mhm.
So for me, something like listing things, having a calendar really gives me a better perspective and a view of what it is exactly that I'm committed to and what I have to do. And that way I can allocate time to things like sleep, things like having food right during the day, things like exercise, things like social activities. So listing out your routine can make a huge difference if because you can see it visually, right? And then where is my battery going to? Where's that energy going to?
Is your calendar color coded?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna just quickly show my calendar. I don't think there's
Mhm.
anything I shouldn't have on here, so I think I'm good. But
I'm like, I won't show mine because I have clients on there, but I
yeah,
will
no,
say
no,
that
don't
it's
do
pretty,
that. Let me
it
just
looks like what's that level in Mario Kart, the rainbow one with all the different colors everywhere? That's pretty
yeah.
much what yeah, there you go.
So this is my calendar. If it's not on here, it's not happening. So I have literally I this took time to learn and get in the habit of, but like I have my lunch hour at the same time every day. I
Mhm.
never used to block that off. I said I'll eat when I can. That's one of the first lifestyle changes I had to
Yeah,
change to not burn myself out. I have to have
yeah,
an hour
yeah,
break midday just for
yeah,
myself so I can nourish and eat
yeah,
and just do relax, just kind of
yeah,
unwind, and then get back into work. But and then everything's color coded, so I have
yeah.
certain clients or certain meetings, certain projects, one color. This creator retreat, right? We're working on it. That's the
Hmm.
pink. So I'm working on
Hmm.
things. Those are the pink things. Uh,
I'm laughing because I love your calendar because it's such a great visual, and I was about to call you out because I'm like, why do I see some overlap with lunchtime on some of them?
okay, this hopefully it's a hold, so hopefully this doesn't come into
Okay.
fruition. But if it does, I'm already violating my own rules. That happens rarely. Okay, so it
Yeah,
happens tomorrow
I'm
too.
messing with you.
But but yeah, at least if you have a system like that, it really helps to avoid burnout. And that's one of
It
the
does.
looking at your
It
routine,
does.
that's one way to track that for
Yeah.
sure, right? And be able to
Yeah.
know, okay, I'm
Yeah.
overlapping here. Like, how can
Hmm.
I fix this so that I actually can eat and not be a mess at the end of the day to come back to like
Exactly.
my life responsibilities, my
Yeah.
husband, my roommates, and not be grumpy, right?
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
one thing affects everything else, so you have to keep everything in check, everything
It
balanced.
does. It does. And exactly, I was joking with you, but I was calling you out because that's the visual, right? That we can start to see, right? Because I know, for example, like for me, I've had that too. I've done that where I put my lunch break because I know that if I don't put it on there, I won't respect it. There's a part
Yeah.
of me that's like, oh, well, it's an open. No, it's not an open time slot. It is lunchtime. So putting it on there and then even seeing that overlap, right? It's also like you start to see a pattern, and I've
Hmm.
done that as well, where even through lunch, I might add like a different thing on there. And then I start to realize, oh my gosh, I said this was going to be a one-time thing, and now it's happening every week. I'm not eating. I don't even have snacks. I know that I'm someone that gets hangry and will get irritable. I'm arguing with my partner after. I'm not taking my fur babies out for their walks because I'm too tired. this is
Mm,
not good for me. So
yeah,
that's why I love those visuals. And thank you so much for being so vulnerable, sharing your calendar so folks can see. But that is what I mean, right? If we have things listed out, we can see them firsthand and we start to notice patterns. And that's where the change needs to happen.
totally.
So let's move on to step number three.
Number three,
It
set
is
realistic
set.
goals.
There you go. Realistic goals. And I put realistic specifically. I should have capitalized it, but I put it on there because, like I said, even way before when we were talking about identifying burnout, many of us set unrealistic goals or we experience what we conceive as expectations that are manageable, but they're really unrealistic. Right. For example, I always have to be creative. It's extremely unrealistic. That's not
Hmm.
how creativity works, right? We have to get inspired. We have to feel good. We have to be rested. We have to be in the mood. So setting realistic goals means being able to do things in a way that is not big picture, but really building up to things, right? It's like progress, which is what I love about it. Progress is not accomplishment of a goal, right? It is really about the growth associated with the task, right? I'm going to grow from this. So I may not be, I don't know, like a Olympic ice skater, but I'm going to learn how to ice skate slowly. I learn how to put on my skates. I learn how to get on the ice, and then who knows, 3, 4 months later, maybe I will be at the Olympics. But my point, that's a very wild example, but my point is that we don't get there by just saying, I'm gonna put it on and then I'm already there. No,
Yeah.
we have to start somewhere. So breaking big tasks into smaller, manageable steps can really, really make a huge difference. That's something that I've been doing in terms of content creation has been how much can I commit to and what days can I commit to create content and prioritizing that time frame for me to do that rather than saying I need to do this every day. I need to put out something every day. I need to get yada yada. I'm like, no, I need to break it down. What are my small steps? What are my goals? And what can I achieve right now? And that helps me not just be able to do this long term, but also makes it realistic where I'm not putting myself down because I didn't meet my, 100 reels every 3 days kind of,
Yeah.
uh, or TikToks or whatever it is, so step number four is taking breaks. This is just one example, but there's lots of different strategies. The Pomodoro technique was really about working 25 minutes and taking 5-minute breaks. Take longer breaks, right? Every 2 to 3 hours. I shared a little bit about this in the workshop that I did live in Puerto Rico. However, what I do want to just add to this is that it's going to be different for all of us. We have to also take inventory of what is our attention span. Some of us deal with neurodivergence or cope with having attention related challenges, right? Or other things, or we might just have stuff going on, like you said, Luis, in life. So we have to assess this and pay attention to what exactly is it that we need and what does it look like, right? What does even taking a break look like? Does that mean that we are uh, switching over to another task? Because that's not really a break, right? It means that we are doing something to help us in the moment to disconnect. And that could be some breathing, that could be some stretching, that could be going for a walk, that could be grabbing a snack, that could be playing with our fur baby, that could be checking in on a friend, right? And doing something that feels, where we can laugh or connect or just be away from this and then coming back to it. I find that this is more helpful than trying to push through like a 5, 8 hour kind of strategy where we do get tired and it's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
Mm. Our
Let's
next
step number
step.
5.
Oh, there we go. Connected. Step number five, practicing mindfulness, right? Mindfulness. I know a lot of people, when they hear that word, they're thinking meditation on a mountaintop and they're like
Mhm.
one with the earth or whatever, or one with time. But the reality is that mindfulness is just bringing attention and awareness to the moment, to right now, right? It's practicing being present. So there's tools out there, right? Like the Calm app, Headspace that are very popular that you can use for this. But there's also other strategies without having to use an app or having to go into deep meditation. And some of that is paying attention to our body. What is our body saying, right? Is my back hurting? Do I need to just rest on it or like do something to help me like be present, right? Our body is really good at telling us when things are happening in the moment. Our brain likes to do a lot of like its own default coping strategies, avoidance, minimizing, distracting. But our body is like, no, our body will be very forward with us. Like, for example, if we're hungry, we might know in our head that we're hungry, but we could be like, oh, I'll eat in an hour. But our body's like, like, I need to eat something right now or I'm gonna faint. So mindfulness, that's really what it is paying attention to our body, right? And even with content creation, this could refer to us taking breaks if we're doing something that's too strenuous. It could also mean wearing, bringing those extra comfortable shoes if we're doing some fashion reels and we got those heels on, so we can take a break and our feet don't, we don't fall over while we're strutting down the street. It could mean just like being very conscious of the present and what we need. Step number 6 is a big one. And I will say that this is probably one where a lot of people misinterpret or also struggle with, but it's setting boundaries, right? Boundaries are not just about things we set with other people, they're also things we set with ourselves. Right, because sometimes we need to set a boundary and a limit with ourselves. Like, hey, I'm not going to work past this time. You need to stick to it because then you're respecting your own time. You're appreciating the boundaries and limits that you set, and you're more than likely to reinforce them with other people if you reinforce them with yourself. So, setting boundaries is really about designating things like time to work and your personal life. Avoid checking emails or social media constantly when it doesn't feel good or you're busy or you have other things going on. And so that can be, things like right now, right? When we were going to start recording, I set my stuff on do not disturb. I'm not looking at my phone. I don't have it near me. I'm here with you. I'm present. We're talking about something very important. And that is a boundary that I have to set with myself. Otherwise, I'd be like, oh,
Mhm.
what is that? Oh my gosh, someone just emailed me, and not present.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Checking your likes.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So moving on to step 7. Practice
Self-care.
self-care. Practice self-care. Self-care, we hear it a lot. And I think self-care too is another term that can be very much connected to like a lot of pop psychology where we're thinking candles, we're thinking, fun stuff. But the truth is that self-care is actually taking care of ourselves. That could mean going to the doctor. That
Mhm.
could mean like, paying attention to your back, right? Going to a chiropractor. I mean, things like that may not always be fun or sexy or even like cool, but like they are part of us being okay and taking care of ourselves. The fun side of it is finding hobbies, finding joy, finding things that are unrelated to content creation or maybe related, but that we can do without having to center the content creation in that moment. Because the truth is that these things will also help us, right? They will give us an opportunity to be with ourselves, to practice disconnecting, which is very necessary because social media is very demanding, content creation is very demanding, and will just make us pay more attention to the things that we need, like eating, sleeping, socializing. Step 8 is one for folks when you notice you're trying these things, it's not helping as much. You need the space, you need the support. It's becoming an issue, right? Like you're just at that place where you're acknowledging it,
Yeah.
right? Seeking professional help. Reaching out to a therapist, reaching out to a counselor, using platforms, right? A Latinx therapy or Therapy Den or any other directory out there. There's so many now. There's I think the wonderful thing is that the access to mental health has become a lot easier, I think, for some groups and some folks, but especially for content creators because we can do things online now.
Mhm.
I don't recommend using social media as your source for mental health and professional health support. Use it for inspiration, use it to identify, use it to understand things in a different context. But when it is something that you're acknowledging is affecting you day to day, go find a therapist, go find a coach, go find someone that is credentialed, that has the background, that can do this work with you to help you, because it may be something besides burnout, right? Burnout could just be an extension of what you might be
Mm.
experiencing. And so this is just, like I said, going back to if we're not okay, we're not going to be putting out anything that's good, right? We're just not going to be in that place. So step number 8 is very important, and not everyone will need to get to that place, but it is a crucial step if you are there.
Yeah, very important.
Number 9 is connecting with supportive people. Like Luis said earlier, some of these relationships you connect with will be for life. They will be, friendships that you didn't expect. People from all types of background that are, passionate about sharing who they are and connecting with others. And finding the supportive ones, right? Because not everyone is going to be our friend. Not everyone is going to connect with us. That's just the reality, and that's okay. There's 8 billion and counting people in the world, but you will find folks that you can connect with and that are supportive, right? And supportive folks are people who are there for you, who listen, who are real with you, who you have fun with. Of course, it's not perfect, but it's also, it's part of the relational piece, right? You get to address and talk about these things and work through things, right? You can tell when that's happening. So I think just being very conscious and very intentional about your relationships and the people you connect with, and more than ever, there are so many opportunities to do that. And
Totally.
then the final step number 10, is reflect and adjust, right? Regularly checking in with yourself, keeping a journal, tracking your thoughts, your feelings, your progress. A lot of us are very afraid or very confused about what it means to do that inner work. But the inner work is really having that conversation and that dialogue with ourselves, right? Is actually asking ourselves and being vulnerable, right? And many of us resist because it can be very scary, right? It can be having to acknowledge or accept that something's not working out, that something may not be what we thought. And making change can be very anxiety inducing for anyone, right? For most people, most of us, it is because it requires effort, energy, transition, and discomfort. So I do encourage people, especially content creators, to really engage in reflection and to adjust. If something is not working out, it's okay. It does not mean that it cannot come back or that it won't work out later, or it might not even be for you. If something is not coming at the right time, then it's not the right time. I think we live in a world where we've been trained to see things from a very scarcity mentality perspective, where everything will be over and we'll never get this again, and blah 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 blah. And the reality is that it's not. If we center and focus ourselves on really that abundance, that there can be opportunities, that we can find opportunities or make them ourselves, then we start to think a little bit outside of that box and not really hold ourselves stuck to the idea, right, that we have to be something, right? But instead, we are working on ourselves. And so, content creation in that way can also be very healing and can
Yeah.
also provide us with opportunities to do that work.
Yeah. I love all of these steps, Luis, and I like what you mentioned, right? It doesn't mean you have to check off every single one.
Mhm.
Take what you
Mhm.
will, take what works and serves you. It may not be all 10, it may be 5, right? It may be
Yeah.
2. But I think it's
Yeah.
still important to, number one, acknowledge and recognize the burnout and make a plan for yourself, change the lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
And on
Yeah.
number 9, I do want to say that there are so many online groups, so many communities to be a part of. I like I mentioned earlier, I have the Trending Socials Community Hub, which is a
Mhm.
safe space for creators and business owners to come with their questions, get support, promote their
Mhm.
business. It is a free community to join, and everyone that's watching this should already be a part of it already. But yeah, there's so many other hubs and so many other
Mhm.
online groups to participate in and see that you're not alone, right? Because you are not.
Yeah.
There are so many people in the same situation, probably feeling the same way you are. You're not
Mhm.
alone.
Mhm. Create those groups too. I've
Create
created a
them.
few on online, and whether it's Instagram or even TikTok group chats, right, where you connect with other people and support each other, share resources, share tips, share reviews on what is it called, on the tech, right, that you might be interested in, and it helps to feel connected to others. So this doesn't have to be a lonely
Mhm.
approach to creativity, right? It can also be collaborative and community based.
Yeah, I love that.
Hey, so this is really an example strategy plan that I had shared with the group in Puerto Rico, and it was really around like having a goal, what we need to incorporate into that, right? Like the self-care vibes, streamline and slay was one of my words, right? It
Mhm.
was really about being intentional and setting a plan for ourselves. So batching and scheduling save you time, reduce daily stress, give you more freedom to be creative and consistent. If we're setting that time apart to focus on something specific like content creation, we won't be stressed out about having to pull ourselves in all types of directions, but we'll be just creating and having fun. And for me, that's one of actually the highlights of content creation is having a day where I can be goofy, silly, like real me and just come up with ideas, put on costumes. I do a lot of fashion content. So obviously I think sometimes the pressure to always have something new or whatever. I like to like recycle things and like reuse them and come up with different aspects of how I want them to be seen and stories behind it. And so all of that, right? Is like how do we come up with strategies that work for us? And then under that, I did put like action one, action two, create content that truly resonates with you. If it's not something that resonates with you, if you're doing it and you're cringing, don't do it. Batch and create content and use scheduling tools, right? There's lots of stuff out there now that can help you automatically post stuff. I mean, even within the apps, or
Yeah.
even just having a plan for that. The self-care vibes one, right, was another one that I was talking about, the other goal. The action is taking regular mini breaks. Action two, setting clear work-life boundaries. So this is really more of a strategy plan to kind of help you have a visual of what is the goal, what are the two things you're going to do, and then how do you take action to get to those things.
Yeah. And I love that this is having a plan is 90% of
Mm,
preventing burnout, right? You're not
mhm,
always going to stick to the plan, but at least there's a plan there versus not having a plan and just being constantly, neck deep in
mm,
stress and deadlines and, all the feels of like not producing enough or not feeling successful. So yeah, I love that this is the example strategy, and great illustration. I'm a visual person, so there's a great illustration
mhm.
to visualize that goal and what are my actions to get to getting there. I love that.
Okay, and it is okay to pause and breathe. The most meaningful content comes from a place of peace and clarity. And I will adjust this to say that, the meaningful content can come from so many different places, but it makes a lot more sense when we have clarity and when
Mhm.
we're in a space to actually engage with the ideas and receive them than when we are just trying to put out there from pressure. So taking deep breaths, slowing down, if it's not coming out, it may take some time. It may take some shifting around. Even today, I was trying to create a reel, and I actually was using a strategy that we learned at the retreat in Puerto Rico with CapCut, where I was trying to do the mask and then what is it, the inlay, and we had done this over there, and I was like, how did we do it? I can't remember. I had to look up a few things, and then I got it done. And you know what? I'm someone that does struggle with perfectionism, so I'm looking at every little detail. If it does not look professional to me, I'm almost like my brain is like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna put this out. But I have been working on that myself and reminding myself that I'm also someone that is learning and that it's okay and that it doesn't have to be perfect. That I'm also getting better at it. And I was actually surprised that I figured it out. And I put it out there. And the funny thing was that right after I shared it, I noticed a little something and I was like, Luis, no, it's
Let
out.
it go.
People are loving it. Let it go. You should be proud of yourself. It was literally the smallest little thing, and that was it. And you're the only one that probably sees
Totally,
it.
totally. As is the case most of the time, right?
Yeah, yeah. And for me, that clarity was really just wanting to like learn and do something different. And I did it. So there we go. It comes from a place of peace and clarity.
Yes. So we're not in the group activity, but if
Mhm.
people did want to partake somehow, how would you go about this one?
Yeah, so this one we did a deep breathing meditation. I don't have it with me on hand, but what I will say is that there's a lot out there in terms
Yeah,
of guided meditations that people can find on YouTube.
yeah,
I do encourage people to test them out. There's some that may be really great and resonate with you, and some that might not. Don't give up on it. Just keep looking for the ones that you do like, and then save those channels. For example, I'm someone that I struggle with accents or sometimes with foreign accents that are too strong. I cannot, and it's not just that I can't understand, it's also I also have very sensitive hearing. So I know those are not going to help me because
they're not gonna
halfway through
work.
I'm
They're gonna
thinking,
stress you out more.
yeah, halfway through it, I'm thinking, what did they say? Oh my gosh. And I'm that person that just needs to know. And so I look for some where the volume is great, where I know what they're saying, I can hear them clearly, and also where they're related to what I'm going through. So, for example, it might be a creativity slump. So I might look for one
Mm,
that's specifically on creativity. I may meditate, like creativity is a river, it's going to flow in, let it come in. What are some ideas that you've been thinking about?
yeah,
What are some things coming to mind? I might be like, I might giggle because something might come to me.
right.
And then that is the purpose of this, right? Is really to help you just be able to center yourself and to give yourself that peace. And so the deep breathing meditation is always going to help with anything like anxiety, stress. I tell folks often that this is the most helpful when you're not at level 10 of stress and anxiety. Don't wait till you're like pulling your hair out. Do it when you're like stuck, you notice yourself getting frustrated, like just a little bit. Okay, just take a step back,
Maybe,
take a deep
mhm,
breath. It's okay. And the meditation is just something that a lot of folks also incorporate into their daily, right? It's like anything else, going to the gym, it's like going for a walk, like getting up at a certain time and making breakfast. I mean, you can incorporate smaller versions or adjust it to your own lifestyle, right? For me, it's literally sometimes just doing 5 big deep breaths, like
yeah.
I'm just doing it over, but letting myself really be present in it. Like I'm breathing. I'm not thinking about something. I'm not trying to focus on how it's being done. I'm just letting myself do it.
And you mentioned the Calm app. That's the one I use. That's a
Mhm.
really good one. There's so many different. It's like Spotify, but for meditation. There's so
Yeah.
many different meditations on there,
Yeah.
and like five
Yeah.
minute, 10 minute, 30 second, 1 minute, like variety. So
Yeah.
that's a really good one. And I'll link some of the YouTube ones that I like. If you have any, Luis,
Yeah.
send them to me, and I can link them in the lesson here as well.
Yeah, I'm actually starting to do record my own because I realized that a lot of people that, well, especially clients, they're so used to
Yeah,
my voice and me doing in session with them that
that's
they're like, I
awesome.
want to hear your voice. So
Yeah,
I've been like
there
trying
you
to get
go.
that ball rolling, doing my own little set of
Perfect.
meditations. But yeah, no, Luis, you're absolutely right. There's a lot out there, and the apps have hundreds of them.
Tons, tons. Group activity two, I remember doing the creating an
Yeah,
affirmation
yeah.
exercise.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I really loved what everyone came up with because it was so personal and so much of a very intimate process. We talked about affirmations as being statements that help ground us, but that also bring empowerment for us. And so I had asked the group to really think about areas where they needed that extra boost or that support, right? And an affirmation was something that they would commit to reminding themselves of and really saying it when they needed it, right? Because my kind of like correlation was the concept that we can be so negative and we can automatically shift to that, and we say mean things to ourselves all
Mm,
the time, and we believe them a lot of times, right? That's really what happens when it starts to affect us, is that we start to believe these negative thoughts. So affirmations are the other side of that, and they don't have to be things that feel unrealistic. That's actually one of the misconceptions. I've had folks say to me, well, I don't want to say things that are super positive and they're not true either. I'm like, they don't have to be extremely positive. We don't have to talk rainbows and unicorns. We can be very much grounded and realistic. For example, an affirmation that might be very realistic is, no one is perfect. I am not perfect, but I am doing my best. That's realistic. I don't have to be like, I'm going to slay every single thing. I'm going to always be perfect, because while we may be slaying and doing a lot of amazing things, it doesn't mean that it's happening all the time, every time. But when we remind ourselves, like, hey, no one is perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm doing my best. I'm learning. We remind ourselves of like, oh, hey, it's okay to, it's okay to mess up a little bit or this didn't come out perfect. I can move on. The example I gave earlier about my own experience, right? Kind of leaning into creating something a little bit more complicated was reminding myself, like, you know what, Louise, this is good. You took a chance. It looks great. You're the only one who probably noticed, and people will like it. Let's leave it there. And that was kind of my way of like taking myself back, because if I would have fell into it, it would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna delete it. I'm never gonna try again. Like that was awful. I need to hire a professional. I'm not good enough. And so it leads into all these things. So affirmations are really just about grounding, about giving us a boost, and about countering those negative thoughts that we may be hearing.
And I just pulled up the ebook that you
Yeah.
created to go with this presentation, and there is a section for your creating your own activities. So please take the
Mhm.
time to open this up. It's also linked in the course for this lesson, and take a look at it. And it also has 10 affirmations. I like the one you said, right? That I'm not
Yeah.
perfect, but I'm doing my best. Realistic. And then
Yeah.
there's 10 others here that you list as examples, but creating our own, I think, could also be very powerful.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you shared that because that was a lot more detailed dive into like creating an affirmation. And there's some in there, like I think what number 9 is, I stay true to my authentic self, knowing that it strengthens my content. Authentic self is really about where we're at. It's really about us knowing that we also shift and change, and there's ebbs and flows, and just embracing that, right? And that shows authenticity. So
Yeah,
yeah, great direct instructions on there for making your own too, making it special.
making it special. Oh, and just like that, if you want to connect with Luis, obviously he's on social media. You can catch him on Instagram, TikTok. You're on TikTok, right? Same handle?
I am on TikTok. You know what? I have started to just put a lot more energy into TikTok recently. And the wild thing is, I see the growth already, which is so
Nice.
great. And I think for a long time, I felt like I wasn't in the demographic for TikTok because I was like, oh, I'm not young. I'm not cool enough. And then I was like, you know what? I'm already like in my older senora,
You're
queer, older queer brain. I'm like, I'm going to start putting whatever it is that I'm doing, and people found it. So that's also been, I think, another little reminder to not psych
yeah,
yourself out or
yeah.
think that because you're not doing the what is it, the super wild dance moves, because I have no rhythm, or anything like that, right? That there's space for everyone, and I have found also other creators on there that I just love because they're so centered in the work, the similar work that I do in education. So yeah, I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. You can reach me through email. You can go to my website if you're in California, and anywhere in California you're interested in therapy. I also provide fully virtual services. So yeah, I do it all. So I'm on there. You can connect with me.
Love that. Love that. Luis, it's always such a pleasure connecting with you and holding space with you. So thank you so much for, again, being part of the first Trending Socials Content Creator Retreat, and also for this wonderful, wonderful workshop, lesson, reminder, right? To prioritize ourselves so that our content can shine. Um,
Yes.
and that's a wrap on this one. And I'm so excited to see
Yeah.
you in the next project that we're going to work on, because I know we're going to do a
Yeah.
lot more. So
Yes,
stay
thank
tuned.
you. Thank you so much, Luis. This was truly special, and I appreciate you. And I hope that folks take one or two things from this. Even with that, you've already gained something. And my last tip is everyone just to approach things with an open heart, open mind. That is always the best. We don't know everything, and also our feelings shift and change. So just being very mindful of that. Content creation is really an extension of us expressing ourselves, and it's a tool. Use it, and remember that it's the tool. It's not the actual thing. It's you are the actual thing. So take care of yourselves.
Absolutely. Great reminder. Thanks again, Luis.
Yes.